Before power tools, every tradesman in America carried the same 15 hand tools. Didn't matter if you were a carpenter, a plumber, an electrician, or a bricklayer. One of those tools is more than 4,000 years old. It was retired by a $9 laser from the hardware store. Subscribe before we start. Number 15. Number 15, carpenter's hatchet. A short-handled hatchet with a flat hammer face on one side and a cutting edge on the other. Most of them had a nail-pulling notch cut into the blade. In 1955, a framing carpenter didn't carry a hammer and a hatchet separately. He carried one tool that did both jobs. He roughed lumber with the blade, drove nails with the hammer face, and pulled mistakes with the notch. The carpenter's hatchet rode in a leather belt loop on his hip all day long. Pneumatic nail guns made the hammer face unnecessary. Circular saws made the blade unnecessary. One tool did two jobs, and two different power tools killed it twice. Number 14, trammel points. Two steel points mounted on adjustable clamps that slide along a wooden beam. Imagine a compass, but instead of fitting in your hand, it spans 3 or 4 feet. A tradesman clamped the points to a straight piece of lumber, set the distance between them, placed one point at center, and swung the other to scribe a perfect arc. Staircase layouts, arched window tops, curved molding, circular frames. Any job that required a large radius started with trammel points. One point had a pencil holder, the other had a hardened steel pin for anchoring. The beam could be any length, which meant the arc could be any size. Most modern tradesmen wouldn't recognize a set of trammel points if you handed them one. The tool that laid out every arch in every building in America before computers drew them is sitting in a bin at an estate sale for $3. Number 13, nail set. A hardened steel punch about 4 inches long with a cup tip. You held it against the head of a finished nail and struck the other end with a hammer, driving the nail below the surface of the wood without denting the surrounding material. The cup tip gripped the nail head and kept the punch from slipping. Every trim carpenter carried 3 sizes in his apron pocket. Pneumatic finish nailers set their own nails below the surface in one stroke. The nail set and the hammer disappeared together. Number 12, scratch awl. A pointed steel shaft set in a wooden handle. You drag the point across wood or metal to scratch a visible line exactly where you wanted to cut. Before fine point markers and mechanical pencils, the scratch awl was the most precise marking tool a tradesman carried. A pencil line has width, a scratch line doesn't. The awl rode in the apron pocket or in a leather sheath on the belt. A Sharpie costs $1 and doesn't need sharpening. Number 11, hand countersink. A T-shaped handle with a conical steel cutter on the end. You pressed it into a drilled hole and twisted it by hand, cutting a cone-shaped recess so a flathead screw could sit flush with the surface. Every hinge, every latch, every piece of cabinet hardware in 1955 used flathead screws. This tool made every one of them vanish into the wood. Power drill countersink bits made the hand version extinct within a decade. Most hardware stores don't carry it anymore. Number 10, tin snips. Forged steel shears about 12 inches long with short blades and long handles. These were not the compound leverage aviation snips that sit in every toolbox today. In 1955, most tradesmen were still cutting sheet metal the old way. In 1955, if you needed to cut sheet metal, ductwork, flashing, or tin roofing, you squeezed 2 handles together and the steel cut, or it didn't. Straight cuts only. Curves took multiple passes and a hand strong enough to leave bruises by the end of the day. Compound leverage aviation snips came out of aircraft manufacturing during the Second World War. By the late 1950s, they'd made the old tin snips nearly obsolete. 3 to 5 times the cutting force with half the effort. The old tin snips required a forearm that could crack walnuts. Number 9, cold chisel. A bar of hardened tool steel about 6 to 8 inches long with a beveled cutting edge ground into one end. You held it against whatever needed cutting and struck the other end with a ball peen hammer. Bolt heads, rivets, rusted hinge pins, stuck fittings, anything a wrench couldn't break and a hacksaw couldn't reach. The cold chisel cut metal without heat, without electricity, without a grinding disc. Just hardened steel against mild steel and the force of a man's arm. The mushroomed head from years of hammer strikes was how you knew a man actually used his. And this next one is the tool that defined the American tradesman for more than a century. Number 8, folding rule. 6 feet of boxwood or fiberglass, joined in sections by spring-loaded brass pivots, folding down to 8 inches. It slipped into the right rear pocket of a pair of carpenter's jeans. There was a pocket sewn into those pants specifically for this tool. The folding rule was the measuring instrument of the American tradesman for more than 100 years. Stanley made them starting in 1843. Lufkin of Saginaw, Michigan built their reputation on folding rules and eventually dedicated more than 10 catalog pages to them alone. Every carpenter, every pipe fitter, every mason, every millworker carried one. The folding rule had advantages a tape measure couldn't match. It was rigid. You could extend it into an opening and it held straight without bending. You could measure the inside of a window frame by unfolding the rule and adding the brass slide extension to the reading. You could stand it upright in a corner and take a vertical measurement without a second pair of hands. The retractable steel tape existed since the 1860s, but it didn't push the folding rule out of daily trade work until the 1960s and 70s. A pipe fitter starting his apprenticeship in 1970 was told to show up the next day with a pair of channel locks at torpedo level and a 6-foot folding rule, not a tape measure, a rule. Number 7, keyhole saw. A narrow tapered blade about 10 inches long set into a pistol grip handle. The blade started wide at the handle and tapered to a point at the tip. You drilled a starter hole, pushed the pointed end through, and sawed the opening by hand. Electrical outlet boxes, plumbing access panels, heat register openings and floors. Every hole that needed to be cut in a wall, a floor, or a ceiling in 1955 started with a keyhole saw and a drilled hole. Reciprocating saws and oscillating multi-tools replaced it completely. The tool that cut every outlet box in every house built before 1970 is now a yard sale curiosity. Number 6, block plane. A small one-handed plane about 6 inches long. It fit in an apron pocket the way a phone fits in yours. The blade sat at a low angle, which meant it could cut end grain cleanly, something a full-size bench plane struggled with. A carpenter used it dozens of times a day, trimming a door that stuck, chamfering a sharp edge, fitting a cabinet face frame, shaving a 1/16 off a drawer side that was too tight. Every adjustment was made by hand at the workpiece without walking back to the bench. The block plane was the most reached-for tool in the kit and the first one a tradesman's hand found when something didn't fit. Number 5, dividers. 2 steel legs joined at a pivot with a friction joint or a thumb screw. They look like a compass, but both legs end in hardened steel points, no pencil. A tradesman set the distance between the points and stepped the tool along a surface to mark equal intervals, laying out stair balusters at even spacing, dividing a board into equal sections without arithmetic, transferring a measurement from one piece to another without reading a number. Dividers didn't measure, they divided space. The concept is so foreign to a generation raised on tape measures and calculators that most people wouldn't know what to do with them. Number 4, marking gauge, a wooden beam about 8 inches long that slides through a rectangular wooden fence. A sharpened brass pin protrudes from one end of the beam. The fence locks at any position along the beam with a thumb screw. You press the fence flush against the edge of a board, push the gauge forward, and the pin scratches a line perfectly parallel to the edge at whatever distance you set. Every mortise, every tenon, every dado layout in a piece of furniture built before power tools started with a marking gauge. The line it cut was thinner and more precise than anything a pencil could produce. The marking gauge is in the bottom of the drawer now, under the combination square that replaced it. This is the one that explains everything about what changed. Number 3, whetstone. A flat rectangular stone about 6 inches long, usually double-sided. Coarse grit on one side, fine on the other. Every tradesman carried one because every edge tool he owned got dull during the day. Chisels, plane irons, hatchets, knives, tin snips. If it had an edge, it went to the stone. The tradesman didn't sharpen because he enjoyed it. He sharpened because a dull tool was a dangerous tool. A dull chisel requires more force, and more force means less control, and less control means the blade goes where you don't want it. The whetstone kept his edges sharp and his hands safe. The practice of field sharpening has almost completely disappeared. Modern chisels come with disposable edges. Circular saw blades get replaced, not resharpened. Carbide-tipped router bits last 10 times longer than high-speed steel ever did. The entire relationship between a tradesman and his edge tools changed when the industry decided that replacing was faster than maintaining. The whetstone didn't disappear because a better sharpening method came along. It disappeared because sharpening itself became unnecessary. Number 2, expansive bit. An adjustable boring bit designed for a brace. One bit that could cut any size hole within its range. A flat steel cutter rode in a dovetail track on the body of the bit and locked with a set screw. Move the cutter out, the hole gets bigger. Move it in, the hole gets smaller. Most expansive bits shipped with 2 cutters. The small one cut from 7/8 of an inch to 1 3/4 of an inch. The large one went up to 3 inches. One tool replaced an entire set of fixed-size bits. It required a brace to turn it, and boring a 3-inch hole through hardwood with a brace and an expansive bit was work that left a man's arm shaking by the time the lead screw punched through the other side. Hole saws and Forstner bits, powered by electric drills, made it obsolete. But the expansive bit could do something no modern equivalent can match. It could cut any diameter, not just the sizes the manufacturer decided to sell you. Number 1, plumb bob. A pointed brass weight, usually 4 to 8 ounces, hanging from a cotton string, the oldest precision tool in the world. The Egyptians used plumb bobs to align the pyramids. Roman architects used them to set columns. Medieval masons used them to build cathedral walls straight and true. More than 4,000 years of continuous use across every civilization that ever stacked one stone on top of another. The principle never changed. Gravity pulls the weight straight down. The string traces a perfectly vertical line. No batteries, no calibration, no software, just a brass weight and the one force in the universe that never varies. In 1955, every carpenter, every bricklayer, every ironworker, every elevator installer carried a plumb bob. It set door frames plumb. It aligned wall studs. It checked columns and posts. It verified that what a man built was truly vertical before he moved on. Then the laser level arrived, a $9 device from the hardware store that projects a visible beam of light along any plane, horizontal or vertical, at the push of a button. The plumb bob didn't become less accurate, it became less convenient. And in the trades, convenience wins every time. More than 4,000 years of gravity, retired by a battery and a beam of light. Every tool in this video was carried by a man who understood his trade from the hands up. He sharpened his own edges, marked his own lines, and trusted his own eye before he trusted a machine. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe and watch the next video above.